welcoming you back to the Andrew Lake Podcast. Hoping you're well. Rise and shine. It's a beautiful day to have your heart blooming. My name is Doster Andrew Lake. So pleased to be with you. Great to be back on the microphone, back out into the world. Giving a very warm welcome to our listeners across the 50 states of the US of A and around the world. We've got our quote of the day, of course, as usual, as we do, bringing you one every episode. And for today, we've got the quote, "Wisdom has no limit." Oh man, I've had a terrible day. I'll tell you what, it's really not good. It's really, really bad. Let me tell you about it. Every week, once a week, I go to the mall and I play piano because there's a grand piano at this particular mall in my hood, in my neighborhood, in my city. And I usually do this quite early in the morning when there's not many people around. And I've talked about this before. And also the other thing is that the music on the radio is not on. So I go there and I play the piano. It's nice. It's great. I've been doing that once a week for quite some time now. But the thing is that this time when I went there, the music was already on. So it was a real bitch. And I talked to the security guard. I talked to this guy that was doing the cleaning, the groundsman. And they were just like, "Oh, you got to talk to center management. Oh, we can't do it. No, it's on a timer." Because I was asking him, "Oh, can you turn the music off so I can play the piano?" It didn't work out. So anyway, that really sucks that my one time playing piano has not worked out for me. And I just tell myself, look, it's not really the end of the world. Things do change, yeah? It's a lesson in impermanence. So much wanting to have a regular routine is just one of those things that, well, maybe it's not the right time. Maybe it's not the right approach. And life always gives you new things to contend with. So anyway, I went off and I got a new drive-through. I got a hot chocolate and a cheese toastie. And that was actually pretty bad. But it was also pretty good. I guess when it comes to hot chocolate and a cheese toastie for drive-through, it can't really be that good, can it? I mean, it's a pretty basic sort of meal. Anyway, what are we bringing to the table today? What have we got on? We've got a number of ideas that are to do with wisdom. When I say wisdom has no limit, you must understand that many things are limited. And first and foremost, the most pressing thing to understand is that information is limited. Your ability to take on information is limited. Your ability to process and integrate information is limited. And the amount of information that is even out there, even with all that we have in the informational sphere, is limited. Now, this is counterintuitive because we have been in a time which was pre-informational sphere. And then we've come into this age of informational sphere, and now we're at the midst of it. We're sort of in the middle part of it, and it will soon start to evolve into something new. There will be a new wave. But because we're in it, because we see this rise of information, we feel like there is a lot of information. And in a sense, by comparing to history and by comparing to the previous age of the technological age, the industrial age, the Bronze Age and the Iron Age and the Stone Age and the Caveman Age and Hunter-Gatherer Age and this sort of thing, if you put it into that sort of larger context, then of course, yes, we have a lot of information now. Yes, it is an informational world. But to say that information is limited is to be acknowledging the fact that there's only so much that you can take in. There's only so many hours of days of the week that you can listen to podcasts. There's only so many hours of days of the week that you can read books. And there's only so many hours of the days that you can watch videos. And it's all media, yeah? It's all video, audio, or text. That's all it really comes down to. And there's only so much that you can take on. Now, there is a critical mass, which is exactly what wisdom is. If you take on enough information, you will start to sense that something new emerges. You'll start to see your own insight. You'll have your own realizations. You'll have things that resonate with you as a kind of truth. And when that happens, then you're going beyond information. Then you're going beyond the mind, and that is wisdom. Now, it's a good thing that information is limited. It's a good thing that there is only so much that you can do with information. And if you sense this, you're feeling like there's nothing very interesting in information. If you reach the point where each talk that you listen to sort of like sounds like the same old idea, I've heard this idea, I've heard this thing. Yeah, if you feel that there's nothing that can be introduced to you as a stimulating intellectual idea, then you're already reaching this point of the limits of information. Now, beyond that, there is wisdom. Yes, now wisdom does express itself through communication. Wisdom does appear within the mediums of text, speech, and video. So it's not an exact on or off switch. It's not an exact thing that is like, well, here's one and here's the other. It's not a clear distinction. It's a distinction that, well, it becomes clear the more experienced that you are with it. Yeah, if you're lost in the informational sphere and you're informationally centric, then you will be unable to see the difference between just information and insight. And information and insight can even parade as each other in different ways. Sometimes you're receiving wisdom and it just sounds like information to you. Sometimes you're receiving information and it sounds like wisdom when it's just information. Now, the thing about wisdom and how wisdom has no limit is that you learn for yourself what wisdom means for you. And you learn for yourself what is bringing to you new realizations. Who is it that you listen to that brings you a new understanding of yourself? Who is it that you can listen to that will allow you to actually look at your life and sense what it is that you need, what it is that you want, what it is that your body is doing? And this can be in a practical sense, in the sense of maybe you need to stretch your legs. Maybe you need a certain type of diet. Maybe you need a certain type of exercise. Maybe you need a certain type of routine. And it can be all that sort of practical stuff, but then also it can be the more subtle arts. It can be, what is your connection to existence? What gives you a sense of feeling larger than life? How is your emotional spectrum? What sort of emotions do you feel throughout the day, week, month, and year? How is your cultural and family conditioning playing a role in your adult life? How is your childhood conditioning remaining with you and affecting your relationships, your work, your general way of going about your day? So wisdom really has no limit. Wisdom is the thing that brings you into all of these things in an explorative way, in an experimental way. And you notice that if we were to try and apply information to this, it wouldn't work. Like, information is not enough. Like, if you just take one example, just take one of these, just say family. The information of your family is that there's you, and then there's your mother and your father, and then there's your siblings. You might have brothers or sisters, and then you've got the next generation of your mother's mother, your father's mother, your grandparents' generation, and you might have nieces and nephews, you might have uncles, and there's this web, yeah? That's the family web, and that's just information. And you can populate that in any amount of detail by what they were like. You could say what sort of person. each of these people were, or are, if they're still alive. But through that process, by labeling, naming, and describing and just saying what is the informational layer of your family, what is the information about your family, you'll start to see that there is actually a wisdom. And it can be that you can describe your whole family without having any wisdom. Anyone can say, oh, I've got 2 brothers and 1 sister and 1 father and 1 mother, and so on and so forth. That's just describing it how it is. But wisdom is something else. Wisdom is the insight into how did they affect you? What is it that they desired? What is it that they had as a life shtick? What is the significance of each of the family members in your family? And of course it is connected to information. Yeah, these 2 things in the way of family dynamics manages to have a back and forth. And even just stating the information about your family can go a long way. That's the first step. That's the first way of making your way towards wisdom. Now, the other thing about family and how information and wisdom can be differentiated is that your family facilitator, or someone who's experienced with family dynamics, can come along and say something like, alcohol affects families, or money and betrayal, infidelity, affects families, destroys families. And that's a sort of truth, which is a general sort of truth. Yeah, that's just an informational thing that, well, is just the truth about families as they are as families. But the wisdom is in, well, what was your experience of those things? How was it in your family? It's personal, yeah? Wisdom is always personal. It's always intimate. Now, my grandfather was an alcoholic. And that had a lot of effect upon my father and my uncles. It made him absent. My grandfather was absent to my father, which left him feeling like he didn't have a father. He didn't have a man that could show him what was important to him. And that made him very angry. That made my father a very argumentative kind of person. A very forceful kind of person when it came to relationships. And when I was a kid, I was always told the story about how my grandfather had rolled the car because he'd been drunk driving. And it wasn't until much later on in my adult life that we came to realize that, well, he was drinking because he had been in the war and he had war trauma. My grandfather had been a nurse in World War II. And we found out the story of how he had been treating people who had been blown to bits on the front line. And he was working in a hospital tent as a nurse while the war was going on. And someone runs in and says, "Everybody, we're packing up and we're moving because they're about to bomb this place." And that shock, that drama, that intense scenario to be in still reverberates out through my entire family. Just imagine it. Just imagine you've got to be treating people with war wounds, and then all of a sudden you've got just a few minutes to pack up everything and move tents, because otherwise the whole place is going to be bombed. And that was just one story. that came back about my grandfather at the war. The other big one, the other one that made the rounds in the family a number of times, was that he'd been hiding out with his, his troop, his sort of battalion, or whatever his group was. And they were in this valley, all the lights were out, very dark at night, and they were in this sort of jungle hiding place. And the scout came back, who'd been doing a security scout, just to see what was around. And the scout had found that there was 250,000 Japanese soldiers just across the hill, which meant that, of course, they were terribly outnumbered, and that if they had been found, they all would have been killed. So just imagine camping out, and I laugh because it's so terrifying. I laugh as a nervous laugh because it's so, shocking. Just imagine camping out and then realizing that if those troops come over the hill, you're all going to be dead. What a situation to be in. Now, how that plays out in my family is that my uncles and my father had this way of making sudden, loud noises. They might pick up a chair and bang it, boom. Or they might slam a door, boom. They might stomp their foot or drop a cup of tea or something. There were these sudden, loud bangs, which would give a shock to everyone around, yeah? And that sort of nervous system shock was an echo, it is an echo of being shell-shocked, of being in the war and a loud, sudden sound happening. Now, of course, my grandfather experienced that for real, and he then passed that on to his children, and then his children passed it on to me and to the people of my generation. And that's an intimate truth unto me, yes? That's a truth that I must contend with in my emotional and energetic sensing. That's my generational trauma to deal with. And the information is secondary to how it affects me, to my feeling, to my response, to my understanding. All that's wisdom. The wisdom is the way of seeing life and going, well, okay, I choose to acknowledge these things and I choose to still continue my day. I choose to continue to keep on smiling. I choose to continue to live my life knowing that there's a dark past and there's many hurtful things that have come to be in this human history that we are all part of. And yet I continue to keep on smiling. I continue to keep on doing those creative projects like the podcast. Yes, this is why this is so important. It's so simple. All we're doing is talking. All we're doing is flipping the verb. And yet it is so important to keep on smiling. It is so important to acknowledge truth, to acknowledge wisdom, and to remember that wisdom has no limit. If you would like to support the podcast, please do buy me a coffee. There will be a link somewhere in the description. You can buy me a coffee. I greatly appreciate it. And make sure you tune in for the next episode. Leave me a comment. Share your favorite episode with a friend. We'll be back very soon with more. And I sincerely hope you have a beautiful day. Enjoy your times. If you see a little doggy, you can pat him. Keep on smiling. Enjoy the sunshine. And if it's cloudy, make your heart sunshining and enjoy happiness. Listen to fun music. Be cute. Enjoy your snacks. And we'll be back soon next time. Bye-bye. Have a beautiful day.